Even though we live abroad, as women of Indian origin, we have a common thread that binds us together because of our strong cultural background. NRI Woman is a platform for women to share their stories and experiences on various topics. Our podcast is about inspiring NRI women and their amazing stories.
Some of the stories we've covered include growing up in a joint family in India, adopting a child as a single woman, and rebuilding one's life after the loss of a child. Take a listen. We hope you'll be inspired or learn something new. I'm Bettina.
And I'm Lenora, and we're the voices behind NRI Woman podcast. We're all heart.
Just look for NRI Woman wherever you get your podcasts or find us at nriwoman.com. New episodes come out every Monday. Make sure you subscribe.
Mommy, this circulated content that is not suitable for kids like me. Welcome to Crime Crazy, the weekly true crime podcast with
Eryn Prime
and Diana Seacon,
where we prove that
we know nothing about our legal system,
but we're still crazy for a good true crime story.
Woo! Thanks, Liam.
Hey, Eryn.
Hey, Diana.
How was your week?
It was good. It was busy. Oh my God, it was so busy. I got some fun podcast stuff in the mail.
Ooh.
I know. I got some podcast stuff that you know about because you helped me make sure that it was beautiful before I ordered it. And then I got some podcast stuff you don't know about that I'm going to bring you as a surprise tomorrow.
Oh, but it's like my birthday was last week.
I know, and I still haven't technically given you your birthday present. And this is not birthday. This is totally podcast. I think we deserve treats for our podcast all the time.
I think you're correct.
And not just these lovely glasses of Baileys that we are currently enjoying.
Very lovely glasses of Baileys. Well.
How was your week?
It was fine.
Okay. That's fair. Maybe we should leave it there.
Yeah, no, I don't really want to talk about my week. But you know what I do want to talk about?
What?
The fact that Crime Crazy is sponsored by Dave Hatt and Seb Bryce.
Your transitions crack me up. Almost as much as I love David Hatton and Seb Bryce.
Yay!
I can't talk, guys. I'm sorry.
Did you just say almost as much as you slut them?
Love.
That is not what I heard on the first pass of that.
Guys, I'm sure you're both very lovely. The end. Okay, continue.
You've met at least one of them.
It's true.
Show sponsors support Crime Crazy through Patreon at the $10 per month level or above. Thank you.
Thank
I'd like
you.
to give a special thank you to all of our Patreon supporters, including our newest Patreon supporter, Rachel. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel.
If you would like to support Crime Crazy, you can check us out on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/crimecrazypodcast or just search for Crime Crazy because that's easier. All patrons get a monthly shout out on the show. You know how else you can get a shout out on the show? Wait, hold on. I bet Liam knows.
Reviews.
Right on,
Whoa.
man.
You could even give them if you're not a dying antelope.
Reviews.
My microphone is damp now.
Gross.
So we have a review shout out. And Eryn found this through some kind of forensic review sleuthing.
We only just sat down with our Baileys, guys. I did. I don't even remember what I was doing. I think it was one of those, I'm going to Google myself, but I Googled the podcast. And then this review came up, and I have no idea if we've ever shouted it out. So Chris M. 1982, thank you for your lovely review. Whenever that might have been, we're sorry. Yes, it could have been a really long time ago, but we still appreciate it.
We sure do. Thank you. If you are so inclined, you can follow Crime Crazy on all the social medias at Crime Crazy Pod or visit our website at crimecrazypodcast.com. All right. Eryn,
Yeah.
did you learn anything this week?
Oh, Diana.
I
did.
Oh, no.
I learned something about our legal system.
God damn it.
I know.
My standards are so low.
I know.
All right, spit it out.
Okay. So it's about 3 states. The first is Michigan. So in 1990, and this all makes a difference, but you won't get to know why until later, although I bet you could probably figure it out.
Okay.
In 1990, the Michigan Board of Parole considered more than 11,000 cases, and they paroled 8,888 offenders. I can only imagine that, like, the last one, they were like, we don't really want to let him out, but then it would be 8888, so I guess we'll give him a shot.
Like sometimes you drive around the block to get the really cool thing on the odometer.
Yeah, kind of like that. Like,
Yeah.
it's not a good idea, and yet...
And yet there's a palindrome coming out. And how can
Right.
how can you not?
You have to. You just have to. About 20% of the 8,888 offenders paroled returned back to prison after new arrests, and another 20% went back to prison because of parole violations.
Okay.
So that's Michigan, just a little bit of like 1990 Michigan. Virginia, on the other hand, which is important only in that I used to live there, ended its discretionary parole in 1995. So 2 things about that. One, that's discretionary parole. They still have like compassionate release and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And the other thing is anyone sentenced before 1995 could still be eligible for parole, even though they no longer allow that.
Okay, so they're kind of grandfathered into that.
They are, which applies to about 300 people in the whole state. Not very
Seems
many.
surprisingly few.
And then Minnesota has parole, as well as a number of other ways in which you can get released without necessarily having served your sentence. But their stats are super, super hard to find and follow. So my sentence about Minnesota was, there is parole here.
Excellent.
So that's what I've learned. Have you learned anything?
I did, and I'm not going to lie, it's kind of been bothering me all week.
You learned something that has been bothering you?
Yeah.
Okay.
So, you know the giant squid, right?
Yes.
Okay. So, like, that piece of knowledge just to begin with kind of freaks me out that it exists.
Okay. That's fair.
But then I learned this.
Okay.
The giant squid's throat runs directly through its brain, so that if it eats something too big, it gives itself brain damage.
Okay, that's amazing. Well,
That is so just
don't know.
fucked up.
It is really bad design.
Not design.
Major design flaws right
No
there.
design. No designers here.
Well, okay, evolutionary? Like, how did that happen, really?
Well, apparently, either it's evolutionarily advantageous to be just dumb as fuck wandering around with TMIs or TBIs.
Yeah, TBI.
TMI
Well, also
is a
TMI,
whole different thing.
right? Maybe that's how
But-
it does its brain bleach. When it hears something TMI, then it swallows a ship and it doesn't remember.
I'm just not going to chew this. And I hope it hits the right memory and not like the day my child was born. My many squid children.
Diana and her many squid children.
Oh,
I'm just
God,
picturing
that's
all of the social media blasts that we're going to do this week, and I'm just keeping them in the back of my mind.
Oh, man.
I will not swallow a ship so I can remember them. So, questions. I have questions. Also, this all fits so much with the podcast I'm going to talk about later. But anyway, questions are, so an octopus is insanely smart, right? And they can empathize. They have double-lobed brains. They have extra, like, kind of centralized nervous systems that are not quite brains, but sort of like brains in all of their arms. They're just fucking incredible. Anyway, something about squid. Oh, are squid smart? Do they start smart before they eat chips?
I don't know. And I'm going to be honest, I did not look too hard into this because squid deeply freak me out.
Do octopuses, octoposos pie, do they freak you out?
Haven't we had this conversation? Sometimes.
They're amazing.
But with them, like the whole squid, like just all of it freaks me out. And but octopods.
The octopus.
The eight-legged creatures of which you are so fond.
Yes.
The only time they bother me is when there's a very close-up picture of their stickers because I have that whole holes problem.
Yeah, that's fair. I think they're amazing.
But otherwise, no. Like they're smart and they're interesting and like super just crazy to watch. But squid just freak me the fuck out.
That's fair. I'm guessing they are not smart like an octopus is smart.
No, I feel like maybe if they stopped giving themselves brain injuries on the regular,
I mean,
they would get a tentacle up in this world.
Right. A tentacle. You know that an octopus does not have a tentacle.
I did not.
They don't have tentacles. Tentacles are partially unsuckered, and sometimes they'll have like a wider lobe, almost like a hand or something at the bottom, and that's where the suckers are. An octopus only has arms. They have fully suckered from where they attach until all the way down their body. Yep.
I did not know that.
There you go. You've learned something else this week.
I didn't. Now I've learned something else.
All
Excellent.
of the aquatic knowledge. So, do you have crime stories? A crime story this week? Because I have a crime story this week.
I also have a crime story this week.
I'm
not sure. We'll go for it.
Well, I was just going to say, like, we should do a podcast or something. We both have these crime stories, and so we should probably, like, start a podcast.
Oh, you know when we should have done that? Like a year ago. Ooh. I hear they're going to start taking off soon.
That is true. Yeah, or really even like maybe start it a couple years ago and then transition.
Oh, and then I could hop in like halfway through?
Yeah, you could just join after like most of a year or a little bit over a year or whatever it was.
Yeah. Okay, let's do that.
Okay. All right, so we'll be right back. We have to travel back in time. That's the sound of traveling back in time. Okay, but we should tell crime stories instead, and we'll just have to assume that the podcast stuff will happen. So, okay, I'm going to tell you this story.
Awesome.
And so, I don't even know where to begin because the mustache is so epic. All right.
Wait, what?
Yes, that is exactly what I said. So,
I'm very excited.
Let me take a step back. Last week, I told the story of murders, as I usually do, that occurred in Michigan. Okay, yes. Near Detroit. So this week, I'm going to tell you another story that occurs in Michigan near Detroit. That is our connection. However,
yay!
I chose this because I don't know if you know this about Detroit, but like there's crime there. So there were several stories to choose from.
The first time I ever saw bulletproof glass was in Detroit.
Yeah. So there were options, but I chose this one specifically for really only one reason. And I'm going to share my screen with you now, and then I will share images with our listeners later.
Okay.
This is why.
Holy shit. That is an amazing...
So, dude has the most epic mustache ever.
And it's like, it's both long, but like contained and like oddly pleasing in color.
And bushy. And
right.
Yet
but like
it looks
not.
neat and intentional. And it does
And like
not
it might be
fit his face.
soft.
Yes, it looks
No.
looks like Cocker Spaniel ears, actually.
That's exactly what it looks like.
Meanwhile, he looks like someone's grandpa who's wearing a stick-on Cocker Spaniel ear mustache.
Right. Like I could see him with a nice trim mustache.
Yeah.
Like, that would fit him. His hair is very short.
Yep.
You know, he looks very nicely put together.
Yep.
And then he's got this, like, fucking pirate mustache.
Walrus mustache.
Yes.
So, bad news. He's a serial killer.
Oh.
Okay. So, let me tell you the story. So, his name is Leslie Williams. I think it's actually Leslie Allen Williams.
That would be Alien.
Yes. Leslie Allen Williams. And he was born on July 4th of 1950.
America!
Yeah.
Fuck yeah.
Right? He had a shitty childhood. And
No.
I know. Lots of abuse, physical abuse throughout his childhood, which, I mean, that absolutely sucks because presumably when he was born in 1953, he was not a horrible human being. And that probably contributed to the fact that starting at age 17, so 1970, he started just breaking every law he could think of, basically. So when he was 17, he broke into his neighbor's house, and then for the next 10 years, just committed crime after crime after crime. And one of the articles I read said he was, for 2 decades, either awaiting trial or in prison. Pretty much.
And here I thought this was going to be a story about how he drove a red car up Lake Street on a Sunday.
Right? And his mustache was blowing in the wind.
Absolutely.
So among his crimes, there was breaking and entering, attempted breaking and entering, larceny from an auto, breaking and entering again, assault with intent to commit murder, assault
Ooh.
and first-degree criminal sexual misconduct, threatening and abducting a woman, but releasing her unharmed, and let's see... That might be all that I've written down for that first 20 years between 17 and 37.
That seems like a good run.
Yeah, no, I mean, that was a lot. Right? So he was finally sentenced to 5 to 10 years in prison for the assault, and then 7 to 30 years because Michigan has a habitual offender law, and he qualified.
Yes.
Yes. So he served 7 years, and in 1990, they paroled him. In fact, throughout all of this, he was paroled over and over and over again, probably, 100% to the point where it was ridiculous and not good judgment.
But why?
I don't know that it was anything specific about him. I think it was just kind of the way that the legal system worked at the time, was that, it was cheaper and easier to parole somebody. And so if they could have good behavior for a couple of years, then they could get out. And that was just the pattern. Mm-hmm. And so that did. He got out over and over again. So in September of 1991, a pair of sisters of Tyrone Township, their last name was Eryn, and we'll talk a little bit more about them in a little bit, were walking home together. They figured they were safe, right? There were 2 of them. They were 14 and 16, and they were just headed home, and it's not, that scary of a neighborhood. And no. Leslie Williams decided he had other ideas, and he raped and murdered both of them. So over the next couple of months, so from September 14th, when this first rape and murder occurred, until January 4th, 2 other girls went missing. On Sunday, May 24th, so a full 5 months after the 4th girl went missing, Leslie Allen, oh my God, Leslie Allen
You're having the
Williams.
worst time with his middle name.
Cannot say it. I'm just going to call him Williams. Williams found himself in a cemetery for some reason. Not dead,
As you
but
do.
just there. And there was a woman there. If he found himself dead, like, this would be a really anticlimactic end to the story.
It'd be a very different story.
It would be. So he found himself there, and there was a woman there. She was 35. She was visiting her mother's grave. And this was in Springfield Township, which is about 40 miles north of Detroit. And Williams decided, for whatever twisted reason had made him hurt these other 4 girls, that he was going to take this woman as well. And so he grabbed her and shoved her in the trunk of his car and threatened her. His plan was to take her away and rape and murder her like he had everyone else. But somebody saw him doing it. So the police caught up with him pretty quickly and rescued the woman from the trunk of his car and arrested him. So super lucky.
Good.
Right?
Yeah.
This is
Holy
like
man.
the second story I've done recently where the police managed to stop somebody from getting murdered, like in the middle of it happening.
It's true.
Like, go police. Good job.
Well, right. But what are the odds that you just stumble upon
Right. That somebody
even any crime just happening?
Right. And that somebody, or, you know, somebody's able to call for help and they're able to get there in time.
Yeah.
Like, how long would it have taken for him to get her in his trunk and then drive away? And they managed to get her out of the trunk. Like, that was quick.
Yeah.
Or she put up a hell of a fight. So
Maybe both.
Maybe both, yeah. Initially, so they arrested him, obviously. Initially, he said he had not committed any other crimes. This was it just his first thing. He had not done anything bad since he'd gotten out on parole, and this just was a coincidence.
Oh. Alrighty.
However, as they're busy questioning him, they get a tip from a former girlfriend. And following the tip, they go out and they unearth the body of, Villanueva. I think that's her name.
Mm-hmm. Villanueva?
Yeah. From a shallow grave in Milford Township. So after this, Williams decides that he's going to be a little more helpful, and so he confesses to a whole series of sexual attacks. He said he'd kidnapped and killed 4 teenagers. He led officials to the graves of the ones they hadn't found. 3 of the teenagers, Villanueva was 18, and then the 2 sisters that we talked about earlier, the Urban sisters, Melissa and Michelle, had been missing since the fall. And then the 4th girl was the one that had disappeared in January. She was 15. Her name was Cynthia Marie Jones. And so after they had uncovered the bodies and the stories matched and everything, they charged him with those crimes. He also admitted to at least 11 sexual assaults and other crimes since he had been paroled in 1990. So basically, he had just gotten better at getting away with crime.
Yeah.
So because he is just trying to check all of the serial killer boxes, he also kept a scorecard where he would write down the victim's physical appearance and score them. Right. And he had a huge collection of trophies, including cameras that he'd taken pictures with, crosses on chains, pieces of cloth, film, matchbooks, pins, all of these things he had taken from them so he could relive his crimes. His only defense in any of this was, yeah, they didn't deserve to die, but I was so weak and I was afraid of going back to prison for raping them, so he had to kill them.
That.
Yeah.
I mean, again, I'm not a professional, but I feel like that was not the proper logic there.
No, I mean, one of the if you didn't want to go back to prison, like not committing a crime in the first place,
maybe not all the raping.
Maybe not.
Maybe none of the raping.
None of it.
None of the raping. Yeah.
I am his age when he was arrested for all of this shit. And, oh no, wait, that's a lie.
You are almost his age.
I am his age when he was paroled.
Okay.
and have managed to commit very, very, very few crimes and certainly never rape or murder anyone.
No, I've definitely never done those.
Right.
I'm sure I've done some other things, but...
I frequently have to remember to slow down on the road next to the middle school here because it blinks at me if I'm going too fast. So that's a law I break a lot.
I did not make it to my car before the parking meter expired the other day.
Man.
I did not get a ticket.
Yeah.
But as I believe I have stated before, I pay all of the tickets I get because I so thoroughly deserve them.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Well, and did you consider murdering if someone was putting a ticket on your car when you got there? Would you have killed them to avoid the ticket?
No, but I have definitely been like, I'm right here, I'm right here, I'm right here.
Right. Please don't. I think that's different than his logic. So
yeah, no, murder has never entered the equation.
No, not even a consideration.
I mean, not on my end. I don't know about the traffic cops' end.
Well, I mean, they've never murdered you either.
That's true. And I mean, I'm good with paying the tickets, but I don't feel like I deserve to be murdered.
No, for leaving your car somewhere too long. So
I'll pay for it again. It's cool.
Right. Let me run through his sentences because it is an impressive list. And then I want to tell you why any of this matters. Because it's a pretty open and shut case. Like, there wasn't a whole lot of investigation. There weren't any big twists or turns. Like, he was a kid who had a really shitty life, who then turned into a really bad dude, who did bad shit. And even when they let him out, he continued to do bad shit. And now he's in jail. Like, no twists or turns in this one.
Yeah, no growth,
no character development of any sort.
No,
yeah,
not at all.
So let me go through his sentences first because I found him on so Virginia has a locate an offender site, and every state has some version of that. Mm-hmm. So I found him on the Michigan one, and it listed everything he was sentenced for. And so I'm only going to go through the 19 for which he is currently serving time at Carson City Correctional Facility.
Oh my.
Because there was also a list of previous ones where he is no longer serving time for those because, presumably they were the ones he was paroled on. Okay, so sentence number 1. The offense was kidnapping, for which he pled guilty and received life. 2, offense is criminal sexual conduct, first degree, which means a weapon was used. He pled guilty, received life. 3, homicide, murder first degree, premeditated, guilty, life. 4, breaking and entering an occupied building with intent. Guilty, 45 years. 5,
wow.
Murder, first degree. Guilty, life. 6, homicide. So I don't really know what all of this means. It says open murder, statutory short form. So that's some categorization of whatever.
Is that the 15-year-old?
Maybe. I don't know. But he pled guilty.
Or maybe it was like, he's done so much murder, we're just going to assume this one is his too?
Yeah.
Like statutory? I don't know.
Or, well, it says open murder, so I kind of wonder if it wasn't like they didn't successfully tie him to it other than his confession. I don't know. I really know nothing about it, but he pled guilty and they gave him life. 7, kidnapping, pled guilty, got life. 8, kidnapping, guilty, life. 9, assault with a dangerous weapon, a felonious assault, guilty, 10 years. 10, kidnapping, pled guilty, life. 11, criminal sexual conduct, first degree, using a weapon, guilty, life. 12, assault with intent to commit murder, guilty, life. I think that must have been the woman that he put in the trunk. Right? Because that was the only one he didn't kill.
Yep.
He used a firearm at one point, so he had a weapons charge, felony firearms, guilty, got 2 years for that. Another kidnapping, guilty, life. Another criminal sexual conduct, first degree, actually 3 of those, that's offenses 15 through 17, for which he pled guilty and was given life. 18 was a murder, first degree, guilty, life. 19, assault with intent to commit a felony, guilty, 7 years. So, fairly
Wait.
certain.
There's one missing.
What's that?
There wasn't a parole violation in there?
Yeah, I
because I think he thoroughly violated his parole.
Right. Yeah, I feel like he probably definitely did. However, I don't think they bothered with that. I also don't think he will ever again have the chance at parole with, I didn't even count how many life sentences, but it was like 15,
so
16.
many.
Yeah. Because he had one that was 45 years, one that was 2 years, one that was 7 years, and then everything else. Oh, and one that was 10 years. Everything else was life.
Yeah.
So that is the reason that this is important, is because it really brought to light issues with the Michigan parole system. Basically, that there was very little that you had to do in order to gain parole, which is a problem. And so I looked at the numbers, because that was what the articles all said, was like, this brought to light all of these issues and the governor was really pissed off and blah, 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 blah. But I wanted to see if it made any difference. And so I went through and pulled all kinds of data. You would be so proud.
So much research.
Right. And here's what I found. So
I noticed that you untied your tie on your shirt as you were saying that.
I did not. I was playing with it. It's still tied. It is tied.
It's not what it looked like from here.
I'm just playing with the strings. I'm not that excited about the data, Diana. All right. 1998. Michigan considered 13,814 parole possibilities, like they interviewed for them. They paroled 72.8%, which was 10,055 people. And they had a success rate, which means they did not come back to prison for parole violation. And I think it also means they weren't rearrested for anything within their parole time. So, like, they went on to be good citizens, whatever. So in 1998, of the 10,000 some odd that were paroled, they had a 49.9% success rate. So more than half of them went back. We don't know I didn't have any data going back further than 98. He was arrested in 91. So this was like as far back as I could go.
I had it in my head that it was 90.
He was
the numbers you had were from 90.
He was paroled in 90. He was arrested in 91. In 98, there was a little bit less than a 50% chance that if you were paroled, you would not just go straight back. All right. So 2005. So more time has passed. They considered 21,038 applications. They paroled 46.6% of them, so 9,801 people, and their success rate was up to 55.7. So they paroled far fewer, but more of them stayed out of jail. And then in 2013, they're finally starting to get a little better at it. So they looked over almost 16,000 applications. 64% of them were released. So presumably, so it's about 10,000 people. I guess they're doing a better job picking the applications in the first place. I don't know. And almost 70% of them stayed out of jail.
Wow.
Yeah. So I don't know how much of that could be attributed to the fact that they let a bunch of teenagers get murdered because they were just letting everybody out of prison. But at least it does seem to be moving in the right direction. So something is going well.
I mean, we're still putting way too many people in prison to begin with.
100%. And really, I mean, those are all like wonky statistics, right? Because there are a bunch of people who really shouldn't be imprisoned for what they're imprisoned for. And then if they get out and do the same thing again, like they still shouldn't have been there in the first place. But just looking at pure numbers, at least they're doing a better job of picking people that are not going to get caught again. Maybe not commit a crime, but also not get caught.
Right. Which is, I guess, the important part there.
Well, yeah. So
Hard to go into the legal system if you don't get caught.
it's true. So there, another serial killer from Michigan for you. Next week,
All right.
I will not do one of those things, either serial killer or Michigan. Maybe both, but I'll at least go right with that.
But at least drop one of them.
Right. We'll see. Do you have a story for me?
I do. So last week on Crime Crazy, I talked about the murder of Helen Priestley by her badly permed upstairs neighbor, Jeannie Donald.
Yes.
They kept bringing it up. Because Helen was found in a blue Hessian sack, it was referred to as the sack murder. So the other night I was trying to decide, what should I pull from the story to be my thread? I wonder if there's been another murder called the sack murder. Hey, guess what? There totally has been.
That's weird.
Yes, and this one is actually before the one that we talked about last week. So we're going vintage again.
Awesome.
Christina Catherine Bradfield was born in 1874 in England, and I don't have a lot of detail about her early life, but I do know that by her late 30s, she was working in her brother's shop in Liverpool. Bradfield Tenter Tarpaulins.
Wait, say that again.
Bradfield
Yeah.
Tenter, Tentor,
Uh-huh.
Tarpaulins.
Okay. Is that her name?
No, that is the name of the business.
Of the business.
Of the business.
So, what is the tenter part?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think it might be they sold material in sacks and ropes and twine and things of that nature.
Okay.
So I wonder if tenter was how you referred to a fabric that you would protect something with.
It could be
I did not look that up.
tent or. That's
It
what
could
should
be, but it was referred in the document several times as tentor.
Well, no, I'm just saying they missed an opportunity.
Maybe. Anywho.
Yes.
So she started at the store in about 1905. She started out as a typist and then moved up the ranks to manageress.
Oh, wow. Really? Okay.
So I'm going to need everybody to start referring to me at work as a manageress.
I'm going to need nobody to say that shit to me.
She was described as a very quiet and refined lady, very regular in habits, and with no male friends or love affairs.
Well, good for
Whose
her.
only hobbies... Oh, but wait.
Oh.
Whose only hobbies were doing a good turn for anyone she could beneficially help.
Wow.
It sounds like she was genuinely just a really nice lady.
And yeah, they called her a manageress.
I mean, it was 1913.
It's true.
Part of Christina's job as manageress was to be the supervisor of the two men that also worked in the shop. George Sumner had been employed there since about 1909 when John Bradfield took him from a boys' home.
Took him?
So kind of like adopting, but for work.
For work. So he was a slave.
Well, no, he got paid £1 a week.
I don't have any concept of whether or not that's good pay.
It was apparently acceptable pay.
I mean, I guess, though, what were the other prospects? Maybe that was a good deal? I don't know.
Well, it was, they went into a little bit of his background. So actually what I pulled this from was really interesting. The woman who wrote the article, I guess, it was 20 pages about this case, is the great niece of the woman that was murdered.
Oh.
And she did all sorts of historical research and all of that.
That's cool.
So they went a little bit back into, actually more into the background of the boys than they did of her family, because I suppose she knew about her family. But he had left home at 15. He was the second of, they just said, about 11 kids. So apparently nobody really knew. About 11 kids. And he'd been on his own at this point for, like 7 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if he ended up in this boy's home at some point and this guy came along and pseudo adopted him for work purposes.
I mean, can we just believe that he adopted him and then also gave him a job? Like, he adopted him because he was a loving person?
I don't think he adopted him. It sounds like he gave him a job. And it sounds like the Bradfields were actually very nice people. Okay. Everybody spoke highly of them. Even the people that worked for them were like, no, they were great to me. So, I mean, it does sound like at least they were a decent business and a decent family to work for.
Okay. I'm just going to be happy about it.
Right. But it's just such a weird...
Yeah.
We just don't have that anymore.
No, that would be highly frowned upon.
Yes. Samuel Eltoft started working there in December of 1912. They were both hired as hand cart boys. Jobs that doesn't exist anymore.
No.
Who ran errands between the shop and the works, or the manufacturing facility. And their duties included stitching and sewing bags and keeping the shop clean.
Okay.
They were both good employees who were on good terms with their bosses. Sure, once in a while 3 or 4 pounds would go missing. And the owners made sure never to have their watches on their desk, but on their person at all times. But overall, it was a cordial relationship. The foreman of the works, having often observed the relationship between the three, said that she kept the boys in their place and there was no familiarity whatsoever.
Okay. Good to know.
Chris, well, she was in an interesting position at that time, being the manageress of 2 men.
Yeah.
And there was another woman that worked in the office. There was a typist. That's a pretty unique setup.
Yeah.
For the time.
Yeah. It would be important to not have any familiarity at all.
Right.
When you're the manageress.
Christina Bradford was a creature of habit. She generally got to the shop a little before 8 in the morning to open up, and she often stayed until the store was closed. Only she and John Bradfield, the owner of the store, had keys. If she wasn't going to be in early in the morning, or if she had to leave early, she'd leave the keys with the foreman, but never with the other shop employees.
Fair. I mean, money goes missing.
Right. As she was closing up the shop, she'd start from the back and extinguish the lights as she went before turning off the gas at the front of the shop and locking it up. Because she worked in a retail establishment, there was usually some money around. She would keep a little in her desk because you need to have some money around the shop. Mm-hmm. But any money from sales or accounts was put in her satchel and not left in the office. Mm-hmm. If it was a bunch of money, she'd give it to the foreman for safekeeping. But if it was between 10 or 20 pounds, she'd take it home with her for the night.
I just see where this is going, and it's not good.
Well, we are on a crime podcast.
I know. Things never go well.
There's not going to be everlasting love at the end of this story. No. Wednesday, December 10th of 1913 started out like any other day. Christina left for work at about 10 to 8, having told her roommate that she'd be straight home from work that evening. She was at the office before 8, but the boys didn't show up for work until 8:30. She was cross with them for being late, and she complained about it within their hearing, and she complained about it to the typist when she came in at 9, but they didn't say anything, and the matter was dropped. John Bradfield stopped by around 10:30, and he received a message from his sister around 3 that afternoon regarding a payment that had been made. He went back to the shop, arriving at about 5 to 6. Sumner and Eltoft were still at the shop with Christina and the typist, and the boys were working on stamping bags with the company initials on them, and John told Christina to keep them late if necessary to finish the job.
Okay.
He then looked in the drawer where the money was kept. He knew there was about 7 pounds that he hadn't collected yet, but it wasn't in the drawer.
Oh.
About 6:30, John Bradfield left with the foreman, yelling, "Good night, Katie," to his sister. She and the typist were getting ready to leave, and there was no indication that she would not be back at work the following morning as usual.
Right.
About 10 minutes later, the typist left to catch her train. She later said that she saw Christina put away the office books and pick up her bag. The watch that she often had on her desk but put in her bag at night was not on her desk. Christina's flatmate, Mary Holden, rang their place to say that she was going to be late coming home, but there was no answer. When she got home later that evening, Christina wasn't there, but Mary thought that maybe she'd just gone to visit her sister. She did that every few weeks.
Okay.
And maybe she hadn't felt well and decided to spend the night at her sister's. Mary figured she'd hear from her in the morning. The next morning, the foreman passed by the shop and found the door closed, as it should have been. Sumner and Eltoft showed up as usual, and Sumner swept the floor and lit the fire before Eltoft got there, even though that was Eltoft's job. The foreman phoned between 8:30 and 9 and was told by Sumner that Christina would be in at 9. The foreman then asked, well, how the devil did you get in? And Sumner told him that Christina had forgotten to give the keys to the foreman that night before, so she had given them to Sumner instead. The foreman figured that made sense.
Yeah, except that never happened.
What?
Right? Am I wrong? She only gave them to the foreman. I've heard this part.
Only ever gave them to the foreman. John Bradfield called and was told by someone that he'd been given the keys and that Christina wasn't in yet. John Bradfield went to the office. As I am reading this, I'm just thinking about how prior to like 1930 or 1940, your whole day was just fucking running around.
Yeah.
If I need to talk to you, I need to go to your store. Oh, but I can't talk to you because you live half an hour away by car, which is like a day away in 1913.
Right.
You know, if I want to talk to somebody at the other part of the company I work at, I have to haul ass over there. Like, just...
Yeah, no,
everybody's in and out and wandering all around the place.
It's true.
So anyway, John Bradfield went to the office at 10:40 to find Sumner, Eltoft, and the typist, but no Christina. He asked the boys what they knew, and Sumner claimed that the previous night she'd told them that she'd be late and asked that they be good boys and come in early and open up for her. Eltoft didn't say anything.
Bullshit.
The typist called Mary, the roommate, and learned that Christina hadn't been home all night. John Bradfield then also assumed that Christina hadn't felt well while visiting their sister and had spent the night, but it seemed weird that she hadn't turned up yet. He sent Eltoft over to his sister's, but she said that she hadn't seen Christina the night before. Oh. Which, again, if she had a phone, this all would have been solved last night.
Right.
At 12:20 p.m., Francis Robinson, a boat captain, entered the third lock at Lightbody Street near Stanley Basin of the Leeds-Liverpool Canal. I don't know what any of those things mean.
Okay. I accept that. I don't think it's important.
It's not, but I was afraid to cut any of it out in case it was important. As he went to open the gate, he found that something was in the way, so he used a boat hook to investigate. He brought the obstruction of the surface and found the legs of a woman protruding from a sack. The large grain sack had been drawn over the body tightly and sewn at the knees. And it also contained 2 pieces of iron meant to sink it, and the head was covered in an additional 3 layers of sacking. Further investigation of the body showed that she'd fought for her life, as she had 2 black eyes and several wounds to her head, later noted by the coroner to be too many to count. Her knees were drawn up and tied with rope around the thighs and waist. Investigation of the scene indicated that a sack had been dragged 70 to 80 yards to the canal, and tread tracks from the wheels of a hand cart were found close to where the body was recovered. A possible murder weapon was found, and the canal was drained to see if they could find her watch and the 4 pounds that they knew were missing. By 5:30, there were newspaper placards posted stating that a body had been found in the canal. Mary Holden's brother-in-law came to visit her with a copy of the Liverpool Echo that reported the same, and they went out to buy a later edition of the paper for more details. From the description of the person's clothing, they recognized that it belonged to Christina Bradfield. The brother-in-law went to the police and was able to identify her body from the necklace she wore and her umbrella. And this is, again, where they went into a very detailed discussion about what she was wearing. She was wearing a silk blouse and a woolen jacket, and she had woven underclothes, which was apparently of note, of something special. Okay. And she, her umbrella had a partridge handle, and she was wearing furs, and she had like 12 layers of clothing on.
Right.
And then it said, this was very typical for a lower middle class, like professional woman. And it was like, lower middle, bitch, I don't have silk.
Yeah.
I don't have furs. I don't have like
True. Also, it just makes me feel hot even thinking about it.
Oh, I'm so glad I did not live in previous times. I love air conditioning.
Yes.
But yeah, just the difference in standard between what is the attire of a lower middle class woman now and then. At 1:30 a.m. on Friday, Samuel Eltoft was awoken and arrested in his home. Although he initially said that Christina had told him and Sumner to go home at 7 the night before, or the night she went missing, his father confirmed that he had not arrived home before 9. He also said that Christina had given Sumner the key, but that he had not actually seen that happen. Sumner had told him that later. As he left with the police, he changed his story. He said that when he was heading toward the door to go home on Wednesday night, Sumner had asked him to wait and said that he wouldn't be long. After about half an hour, Sumner appeared with something in a sack in the handcart. Sumner told Eltoft to take the cart and walked ahead of him to show him where to go. Eventually, they were going across a field when they ran into some stones and couldn't take the cart any further, so Sumner dragged the sack the rest of the way to the canal and dumped it in. And he said it was a sack full of rubbish.
Right. And I was like, yes, of course that's what that is. I believe you.
But again, different standard of time where somebody's like, hey, I need to dump this trash in the river real quick.
Still
and that was like, oh yeah, let's do this.
Okay, I'll go with you.
Sure. Maybe we have some more trash to dump in the river as well. Eltoft was charged, along with George Sumner, with causing the death of Christina Catherine Bradfield and remanded for 7 days. But where was George Sumner? Well, first of all, he didn't exist. The name Sumner was an alias adopted by one George Ball, who took the name from a street that he had lived on.
I was like, what do you mean he didn't exist? Okay.
Didn't exist. He was the second son of a family of about 11 who had not lived at home since he was 15, and although he was presently 22, he told people he was 20. Prior to working at Bradfield Tenter Tarpaulins, he'd lived an irregular life. But under Christina Bradfield's wholesome influence, he'd grown up quite a bit. He soon developed a warm regard for her, and it was reported that he'd saved up his earnings and presented her with a set of furs as an expression of gratitude for her goodness of heart toward him. Oh. Which again...
Yeah.
Like, I didn't get furs from my workmates on my birthday last week.
No, you did not.
Or just for being awesome.
Sorry to let you down.
I don't know what I would do with furs. I have one of my grandma's, and like I'm a little embarrassed to own it, but then sometimes I bust it out and wear it.
Right. I'm pretty sure our boss
or I let Amanda wear it. Yeah. Or let Amanda wear it. Yeah. He was a trusted employee and regularly given duties above his station. He was described as having an attractive personality, was clean-shaven with dark, glittery eyes.
Ooh.
Reports claimed that he was not addicted to the amuser craze of many youngs.
Wait.
So I think what that means is he wasn't, like, he didn't ever leave the house to go have a good time.
Okay.
But he stayed indoors in his lodgings like a good boy.
Wow.
He would go to the movies with his landlady because she got free passes in exchange for hanging the movie posters in her lodging house.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So the search was on for George Bell. He was described as 22 years old, about 5'6", clean-shaven, with heavy, dark eyebrows, one of which was much higher than the other, and a slovenly style of walking.
So he always looked very quizzical.
Yes. I looked for a picture of this guy because I was very curious about his eyebrows. And I couldn't, well, I did find one. There seems to really only be one that exists, but it is a picture from pre-1913. And it's like a picture that was taken out of the newspaper, like a picture of a picture in the newspaper. And I couldn't see anything.
Bummer. I'd like to.
I know. I was very
permanently
curious.
Quizzical.
Yes.
Not.
And I like that the official description was that he had a slovenly style of walking.
Of walking. Not even
Yeah.
of dress, but just this is how he walked.
Right. Yeah, no. Just walk like slob.
Right. That's funny.
On December 20th, George Ball was recognized in Liverpool by a childhood friend, despite the fact that he was dressed like an out-of-work sailor, and he'd shaved his eyebrows off and was wearing a pink flesh-colored eye shade and clear steel-rimmed glasses to lessen the glitter in his eye.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That is a different level of wearing a disguise than my guy with the ridiculous blonde wig last week. But
Right. Shaving your eyebrows off.
God, I bet the most distinctive part of me is this eyebrow that's like seriously not in the right place. I'm just gonna shave them off.
This is why I wanted to know what it looked like.
Right.
George Ball was arrested around midnight at his boarding house. When his room was searched, they found very little money, but Christina's watch was there, along with a gray suit with some blood stains, a tin of almost empty Vaseline, which he used for the wounds that were on his face from Christina.
Oh, okay.
And I can hardly believe I'm about to say this on the internet. 5 postcards that the coroner later described as filthy beyond description. The cards are obscene and the printed matter indecent.
Dun, dun, dun.
So
How dirty are we talking?
if you want a not 100% work appropriate, but you're probably not going to get fired for it time, Google 1913 postcards.
Nice.
You might see a nipple, but for the most part, you're not going to see anything at all.
I am Googling it while you
Obscene
continue to tell the
and
story.
indecent.
Obscene and indecent.
Hmm. Sumner, Ball, whatever, was charged on Monday and remanded for 7 days. In his statement, he said that a third unknown man had actually committed the murder, threatened him and Eltoft, and then told them to clean up the mess the best they could.
Right. That is always what happens. Some rando
Yes.
breaks in and makes you murder somebody.
Right.
Or clean up after
Oh, no,
their
like
murder.
the rando murdered, but they had to clean up.
Yeah.
An inquest into Christina Catherine Bransfield's death was held on January 7th, 1914. A whole bunch of forensic evidence, including blood in the shop and on the clothes of Ball, maybe on the clothes of Eltoft, they couldn't quite tell. Detective Chief Superintendent Duckworth hinted that there might have been an attempted outrage prior to the murder, but that this presumption was based on the appearance of the woman's clothing rather than any revelation of a medical character. So let me translate Victorian into real talk here.
Yeah.
They think she might have been raped, but they only think that because her clothes were disarrayed, not because they had a look-see.
Right. Yeah.
I feel like if I'd been tied in half and shoved in a sack and then spent a day in the canal, my clothes would also be in disarray.
disarray. Yeah. Yeah.
My clothes are in disarray presently, and I've had none of that happen today.
Well, I'm very glad you have none of that happen to you.
No, I mean, it was a relatively uneventful day.
I am just finding all of these extremely sexist postcards, Diana. I'm very unhappy about it.
Wait, did you not pick up that they were porn?
This one is not, other than there's a kiss, but it's her kissing the dude, and it says, "Suffragette vote getting the easiest way." Because she's kissing.
Ugh.
Right?
Gross. No, like, look up 1913 porn.
Yeah.
It's very, I mean, it's very lovely, but it's not.
I did look up obscene, but
I've seen worse.
thank you for sharing. Whoa. Okay.
I mean,
yeah,
God,
no, you have to,
I've seen worse walking down the street. Come on.
you can't just look up 1913 porn, by the way.
Oh.
Because it's not 1913. It's
What
just
did
porn.
I search for? Oh. Well, now I have to look at what I searched for. I thought that's what I searched for.
If it is what you searched for, then this
Oh,
is
I
not.
searched for...
Holy
Well...
shit.
So what I meant to search for, I am looking at my history here, was 1913 porn postcards, but what I did search for was 1913 porn postcards.
Well, I have just seen some things I cannot unsee. Whew.
Sorry. Don't listen to me.
Wow. Continue with your story, please.
Alrighty. L. Toft testified at the inquest, trying to further prove that he had nothing to do with the entire situation, but Ball offered no comment at all. After 15 minutes of deliberation, the jury of the inquest returned a verdict of I cannot say willful murder. That is so hard to say. Willful murder.
Willful murder. Actually, that is really hard to say.
It's super hard to say. Against Bell and Eltoft, and they were further remanded until January 13th when they were committed for trial. At that time, Ball responded, "I reserve my defense," while Eltoft stated, "I am not guilty." The trial began on February 2nd with Ball and Eltoft charged with willful murder.
What?
Willful murder. And Eltoft also charged with being an accessory after the fact. They both stuck to their stories. Ball, that a third man had committed the murder, and that maybe there was even a fourth guy involved. Who knew? And Eltoft maintaining that he had nothing to do with the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
After 2 days of testimony, the case was turned over to the jury, and the jury was warned against making moral judgments of Ball on the basis of the indecent photographs and unsubstantiated allegations concerning his relationship with Mrs. Kennedy, the 60-year-old landlady that he would go to the movies with.
Right.
It took the jury an hour to convict Ball of willful murder and Eltoft of accessory after the fact. Ball was sentenced to death, but Eltoft, because he was younger and the jury thought he'd been unfairly treated, influenced, was given 4 years. George Ball was executed at 9 a.m. on Thursday, February 26th, which, by the way, 2.5 months after the murder? Like, crazy fast.
That's not very much. I guess we're not doing a ton of appeals or...
Well, so they did actually talk about, I don't know that Ball ever appealed, but they talked about Eltoft was filing an appeal, and then a further search of his place showed or turned up a coin that might have been from the stolen money. And with the appeal, you can present new evidence. So he's like, nope, I'll just take my 4 years, thanks.
Oh, well.
George Ball was executed at 9 a.m. on Thursday, February 26, 1914, at Walton Jail. He never admitted his guilt, and we still don't know why he killed Christina Catherine Bradfield.
So are we assuming that he was pissed, that she was pissed that he was late?
No, because it seems like nobody much gave a shit about that.
Right, but that was the only, offense that I...
Right, and he did get away with a bunch of money, several pounds, which at that time was several weeks' wages. And there was a very thorough accounting of every shilling of that. Mm-hmm. And basically, he went to a different part of town from where they knew he was. He shaved off his eyebrows. He made a couple of friends, took them all out drinking a whole bunch, bought some food, bought some more lodging, met a couple of girls, was going to meet up with them again. He just went out and had a baller week.
Yeah. It's not worth murdering someone.
No, I don't know, save your pennies and just have a baller week.
Right? Right. Everyone chip in a little bit. You could have one even sooner.
Well, right. I mean, granted, he was working for near slave wages in post-Victorian England, but...
And for a manageress.
So there was some talk that he was in love with her. There was talk that he had saved up some of his money and bought her some furs, which again, with the furs, he had a photograph of her that he had acquired at some point. So there was talk that he was in love with her. There was talk that there was a torrid love affair, but even her flatmate was like, yeah, I mean, I knew she worked with a guy named George.
Less torrid love affair, more one-sided.
Well, right. Like, you know, he seemed like the kid had some potential. You know, so it clearly wasn't reciprocated.
Right.
And then they dragged the poor landlady in who just had some free movie passes and her husband worked across town.
Right.
So we never know. He never backed down from that third guy's story. Eltoff never said anything other than, I didn't know it was in the bag. I didn't know what happened. I just helped him dump it in the river, man.
And there wasn't any super obvious motive, and
no, and they picked the wrong part of the canal to dump her in because the bag got caught on the lock.
Yeah.
If they'd put it in a different place, she would have swept out to sea. They never would have found her.
Right. No one ever would have known. They would have gotten away with it.
Absolutely. So.
Huh.
Yeah.
There you go. I like all of the insanely random details in that story. Like, there's no motive. There's no real understanding of what happened, like all the murder part. However, we know what she was wearing. And
oh, in detail. Well, in the woman that wrote this great grandniece or whatever it is, she went through all the contemporary coverage and also all of the court records and all of the government documents, and everything was still there. She said the only thing that she just said didn't survive, she didn't say what happened to it, was the actual coroner's report. But there was enough referenced in other documentation that she was able to pull some stuff.
Right.
So I only used one article for this, which I don't usually do. But it was really good, but it was also 20 pages. Like, I wasn't going to find anything else out.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah. So my grandpa does genealogy, and so he has published a couple of books that are just these enormous, like Harry Potter size books about our family tree. And I am certain that there is something in there. Like, maybe that's what I need to be doing, is looking back through my family to find a crime and write 20 pages about it.
I would also think that. And we have, on my mom's dad's side of the family, somebody did that as well, like in the 60s. And then one of my cousins apparently is doing some updates. And it goes all the way back to the Doomsday Book, I think.
Oh, wow.
Like, we was fancy back in the old country. Yeah, it didn't work out so great when we got here. But so it went all the way back, and there's actually 2 volumes. It's Beach in America and Beach in Canada, and we have Beach in Canada because the family split after the Revolution, and my branch went up to Canada, and the rest of them are down here. Yeah, no, there's nothing super interesting in terms of the amount of information they were able to find, but we've been up to nothing.
I'm fairly certain we had a pirate.
Ooh, that's cool.
Right? Well, you need to go back in time and tell your family to stop being so boring.
In 500 years, I'm going to have a podcast.
Yes, I'm going to need you to commit some crimes. Not enough to change the family tree. Just enough to give me something to podcast about.
And I know that you're already amazed that I'm 5'8" and wear my hair this short. But I'm going to need to trust you about this podcast.
Right. I don't have time to explain what a podcast is. You're not going to get it.
No, have you heard of the printing press? No? Okay. Conversation over.
Just don't worry about it. Okay. It's important.
Someday you're going to have someday even our family will have up to 3 books in our home. It's going to be great.
Right. It's a big deal. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
So speaking of podcasts, have you listened to any?
I have. I listened to, I think I say this every week, going through my backlog of all the stuff I haven't listened to. And the one that I chose to listen to this week is called Criminal Broads. And it is a true crime / history podcast where the host, it's a single person. I'm trying to find her name desperately here. It's a lady that does the podcast, and she goes back in time and finds a lady criminal and tells the story of it.
Very cool.
It is very cool.
So are these like badass women criminals or just all women criminals? Or
Absolutely. She did an episode on Griselda Blanco, the godmother of cocaine.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. She did one on Carolyn Layton, who is Jim Jones's right-hand woman. The latest one, I haven't listened to this one yet. She's doing a two-parter. I think it's going to be on the women of Jack the Ripper, talking about the theories that it might have been Jill the Ripper.
Ooh.
Yeah. So lots of really cool stuff. She is, she just released episode 23, and they're really fantastic. I enjoy it a lot.
Cool.
Oh, man, she even got Harold Schechter on one. I missed that.
That sounds very cool.
Oh, talking about Belle Gunnis. Yeah, I got to listen to that.
Diana's like, excuse me, I have to go. Podcast over. I have stuff to do.
Yes. But first, I want to know if you listened to anything new this week.
I did. I actually just sort of grabbed my... you know what I did? I went on Twitter. So this will answer the question that always comes up in like podcast groups on Facebook. Of whether or not it's worth doing social media, like whether or not that actually translates into downloads. Because I went on Twitter and I was like, I need to listen to a podcast. Let me just scroll down until I get to something that catches my eye and has a link. So I listened to Scary Stories to Tell When You're Drunk.
Oh, do tell.
Yes. So first of all, just it was awesome. I listened to one of the early episodes, and I never know whether I should do that because early episodes of independent podcasts tend to be kind of rough. The sound quality sometimes, although theirs was great, but more like, you just haven't found yourself yet. So,
Right.
But this was pretty good. And so it's basically just they get drunk and then they tell scary stories. And some of them are fiction. This one was on Winchester, right? So the Winchester house and all of that kind of stuff, right? So that was cool because I knew all about it, but then like it was also just really interesting. And I will say like the one thing about this podcast is it made me want to start another podcast where you have to get drunk before you record. Just in general.
I mean, we could just amend what we do here.
I know. It's true. This one is like sometimes drunk, sometimes sober, sometimes in my bedroom, sometimes this is just all over the place. But
all over. Yeah.
But theirs was, get together with friends, drink, and then tell a scary story. It was a whole lot of, so if you don't like the getting off topic or talking over each other or whatever, this would not be for you, right? But because it was a whole lot of that, but in this hilarious, like they are so wasted and having such a great time and I wish I was there kind of way.
I'm going to have to check them out.
Right? Scary Stories to Tell When You're Drunk. I will link it on the website.
Outstanding.
So, also, guys, I am totally up for some recommendations as well. Somebody has sent us a couple, and they are on my list. I just didn't get to them this week. But if you have other favorite podcasts, send those our way. Listening to 2 new podcasts every week. We're never going to get through them all, but we're going to make a dent.
Yes, we are.
So,
and hopefully you'll find some cool new stuff, too.
That's right. Anything else before I ask my last question?
No, I think I'm good.
All right. Well, then,
I'm good.
Diana, do you have any advice to leave us with?
You guys, just stop making a big deal about porn. It's cool.
didn't know what your advice was going to be this week, but that did not. That wouldn't have occurred to me. I mean, I agree. It's just not that big. Well, I mean, I think we have to assume that, like, this was porn that was made by consenting adults, blah, 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 blah.
Right. Blah, blah, but, like, just because somebody consumes porn doesn't mean that they bludgeoned their mangeress to death.
It's true.
You know?
It's true.
Just, like, learn to be cool about stuff.
Right. Unless it is porn of people bludgeoning other people to death.
Well, no, that's not cool at all.
Yeah.
But if it's just saucy postcards, which may or may not show a tiny bit of areola, go ahead and get on over that.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Call your people.
Call your people. This is not 1913 or whenever Diana's story took place. You can pick up a phone.
You can. You won't, because that's weird, but you can at least text them.
It's true. Text your people.
And don't end up on next week's episode.